Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Raja Kunj Bihari, Raja Kunj Bihari, Raja. Jaya Raja Kunj Bihari, Raja Kunj Bihari, Raja. Jaya Raja Kunj Nam Sankirtana ki Jai. Shila Prabhupada ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnana Timirandasya
Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Mancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Today we'll discuss chapter 10, verse number 7. So we'll start with an easy question. What's the title of this chapter? The opulence of the Absolute. And who is the Absolute? Krishna. If you ask 100 people on the street, who is the Absolute? What kind of answers you'll get?
Benjamin.
Huh?
Benjamin.
Benjamins.
Well, I think most people will say God. They won't know what God is, but they'll say, "Oh yeah, God."
Okay, so those who are theists at least would say God, but you made a very important characterization, qualification to that comment, which is, but they won't know who God is. It's a very important point. We'll come to that today in the purport. Srila Prabhupada is going to speak. So, actually, we're all in search of the Absolute. Right? Because when you have whatever is absolute, it means you have the ultimate, the pinnacle, the topmost. Everything else then below absolute is what we call relative. I have some money. I have $100 in my pocket. I have some wealth. But what is that wealth relative to Bill Gates? It's nothing. I may have some intelligence. But what is that intelligence relative to Albert Einstein? And so on and so forth. So we have all these things, but we're actually in search of the absolute. One who has it ultimately, completely, fully. Okay? And so, when the title is The Opulence of the Absolute, who has these opulences in full, in absolute terms? Krishna. And whatever we possess, it's all relative. I may be so intelligent, or so strong, or so beautiful, or whatever it may be, famous, but it's all relative. Relative ultimately to who? Krishna. So if we see in society around us, there is so much comparison of our relative opulences, right? That's what we do. We go around and we try to compare and contrast our relative opulences. I have this, you have that. I have the 3 Series, you have the 5 Series. I have the lakefront house, I have the 2 homes. I have, in this, are always comparing our relative opulences. And we know by accumulating these relative opulences, we achieve, in the end, no satisfaction, no happiness. Because we are always competing and competing, but we're always losing. There's always something more to gain. Right? So, this search for the absolute, when we come, by the time we get to the 10th chapter, sometimes we take it for granted. Oh, we're going to talk about Krishna. But it's actually such a rare fortune to even know who is Krishna as the absolute, let alone to understand something about him. Right? We may know there's a God, there's some superpower, but then to go deeper and to actually know something about him, it's extraordinary knowledge, and it's extraordinarily powerful. Knowledge is power, because with knowledge we can accomplish something. Right? So this opulence of the absolute, Krishna is describing to us his great opulences. Now, why would he speak about his opulences? That seems a little self-serving. Let me tell you how great I am. Right? Let me tell you. Sit down. Let's talk. We're in the middle of the battlefield, Arjuna. You are in distress. You are facing this prospect of fighting your relatives, your grandfather, your cousins. Millions of people are about to die. Such calamities have occurred already and are about to occur. But let me tell you about myself. The foolish don't understand why Krishna is speaking about himself. And some will even go as far as to criticize. Because at the surface you might think, why Krishna would talk about his opulences in the midst of trying to help his friend? He should be speaking to help his friend. And herein lies a very important lesson for us, is that anytime we're going to approach these spiritual topics, we must hear them in line of our Guru Parampara. Because our own logic will always lead us astray ultimately. Maybe it'll lead us in the right direction initially, but ultimately our own logic will lead us astray. We must surrender. And that is why Krishna said in the very opening of this verse, this chapter, he says, because you are my dear friend, for your benefit, I shall speak to you further. So it's for Arjuna's benefit that Krishna is going to speak the opulences. And he says, this knowledge is better than what I have already explained. Which is quite extraordinary, because in the prior chapter we know, right in the second chapter verse, he said, Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, king of knowledge. So, in the 5th verse of this chapter, 5th verse, Krishna is speaking about all these qualities. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt, delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness. And where do all these qualities come from? Krishna. They come from Krishna. And there's a very important instruction here for us, which is that everything comes from Krishna. When Krishna is going to begin to speak about his opulences in the middle of this chapter, after being asked by Arjuna to speak specifically about them, Krishna is going to speak about all these glorious things. But in the end, at the end of this chapter, he says, but all of it is but a spark of my splendor. This entire creation is but a spark of my splendor. And the important thing understanding that is, whatever it is that we are attracted to in this world, we may be attracted to golf. We may be attracted to beautiful beaches. We may be attracted to movies or foods or different relationships or all these things we may be attracted to. Video games. I don't know anybody who's attracted to video games. All these attractive features. Who possesses those things that are attractive in full, in complete? It is Krishna. And when we understand that, it brings us to one ultimate conclusion of life. And that's what we'll read in the 7th verse. The ultimate of ultimate conclusions of all life, Krishna is presenting in the 7th verse. So, let's read it, and we'll read the purport and then discuss further. Someone wants to read?
One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. The highest summit of spiritual perfection is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless one is firmly convinced of the different opulences of the Supreme Lord, he cannot engage in devotional service. Generally, people know that God is great, but they do not know in detail how God is great. Here are the details. If one knows factually how God is great, then naturally he becomes a surrendered soul and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord. When one factually knows the opulences of the Supreme, there is no alternative but to surrender to Him. This factual knowledge can be known from the descriptions in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures.
Next paragraph.
In the administration of this universe, there are many demigods distributed throughout the planetary system, and the chief of them are Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the 4 great Kumaras, and the other patriarchs. There are many forefathers of the population of the universe, and all of them are born of the Supreme Lord Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the original forefather of all forefathers. These are some of the opulences of Supreme Lord. When one is firmly convinced of them, he accepts Krishna with great faith and without any doubt, and he engages in devotional service. All this particular knowledge is required in order to increase one's interest in the loving devotional service of the Lord. One should not neglect to understand fully how great Krishna is, for by knowing the greatness of Krishna, one will be able to be fixed in sincere devotional service.
So, what is the result of understanding Krishna's opulences? Knowing about his opulence. What is the result?
Unalloyed devotions.
Unalloyed devotional service. But one must be, there's a qualifier to knowing this opulences. How must we know these opulences? How strong we should know them?
Factually convinced.
Factually convinced. How many of us are factually convinced that Krishna is residing in the deity form? We have some conviction. But if we are fully factually convinced, would we ever leave the deity? No, we would never leave. Right? So, this becoming factually convinced is our goal. It is actually a fact that, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are his part and parcels. But the question is, how deep is my conviction in that? Right? So how can I measure my conviction in this statement? How can I assess my own conviction in this statement? Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is a measure of my conviction in this statement?
By how fixed you are in your devotional service.
By how fixed we are in our devotional service. What does fixed in devotional service mean?
Unwavering?
Unwavering. Let's keep peeling the layers back. What does unwavering mean? What are some examples of unwavering?
I'm not attracted or affected by anything material.
I'm not attracted or affected by anything material. That's a good definition by speaking of the negative aspects, right? So the things that are not Krishna do not occupy any of my attention. What else is how else can we describe unwavering? I like that word.
Like faithfully?
Faithfully. So to be unwavering, we must have faith in something, right? If I have unwavering faith in the in money, right? So much so that if I see it in a moment, I'll pick it up. I would say, oh, my back is hurting. Oh, I don't want to do any more ab crunches to pick it up. No, I have unflinching faith in it that I'll do it. So faith accompanies this unwavering. How else can we describe unwavering? Surrender.
Taste.
Okay. Let's hold that one for a second, because then we're going to ask, what is surrender? But hold that thought. What are some practical examples or, points that can help understand unwavering, what it means?
Complete acceptance that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not going towards other demigods, not getting attracted to them.
So complete acceptance that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. Srila Prabhupada writes in the first sentence of this purport a very powerful statement. If you think about this statement, it's quite a bold statement Srila Prabhupada is making here. He is saying the highest summit of spiritual perfection. Now, if you think about how many broad spiritual paths are there? 1 or 2? 3 or 4? So many. How many volumes of literature are there contained within overall Shastra, scripture? Couple? Few books? How many different propagators of spiritual knowledge are there? And Srila Prabhupada is saying the highest summit of all spiritual perfection is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That almost seems too simple, right? All this knowledge, all these books, all these different processes of worship and different rituals and circumstances and tapasyas and this and that, it all sums up to the highest perfection being knowing Krishna. That seems maybe, a little bit exaggeration or not, fully accurate. But let's see. What does knowing Krishna, how does knowing Krishna lead to the highest summit of spiritual perfection? Yeah.
Are they talking about Krishna Prema?
That's the ultimate perfection. Yeah. So how does knowing about Krishna lead to perfection? What is perfection? Let's define that first. What is perfection of life?
Is it being saintly?
Being saintly? Okay, that's a question. But if being saintly doesn't result in something, we won't be happy. Okay? So what is the ultimate perfection of life we're all looking for?
To be happy.
To be happy. To be happy. To be peaceful. Peace of mind. Happiness. Right? Everybody is looking for the same perfection. Is anybody not looking for this exact same thing? You have met anybody in all of your dealings that's not looking for this? Anybody? Every single person, even the birds and the ants and the squirrels and everyone, they're all looking for happiness. So, the highest happiness then must be the highest perfection. Right? Can we say that? Highest happiness must be then the highest perfection. Right? Well, who is the source of all happiness? Krishna. How do you know? Huh?
Just said that in the previous verse.
Because he said it in the previous verse. Yeah?
He gives us knowledge to see through.
Because he's telling us how now. He is telling us, and that's why Srila Prabhupada says, to your point earlier, Mataji, that we may know God, but we don't know about God. So, if we just know God, it may take us to the point of respect. Maybe even some fear. We say God-fearing. But when can actual love come?
With association.
With association. But in order to love someone,
Reciprocation.
we should know that. We have to know about them. Right? How you can love unless you know something about them. I can't say you should love your distant third uncle. Why? Just love him. He's great. Okay, I love him. And I'll ritualistically love him. But if I learn about him, why he's great, what makes him great, by hearing about him, what happens? My love is there. So Prabhupada is saying here that unless one is firmly convinced of the different opulence of the Lord, he cannot engage in devotional service. Now, Srila Prabhupada here is talking about pure, unalloyed devotional service. So, let's define what is pure devotional service. No other desires. Unalloyed. Alloy means a mixture. An alloy means a piece of metal which has different types of metal within it. Unalloyed means it's pure. If it's pure silver, pure gold. If it's alloyed gold, it means it's gold with some nickel and some other different metals in it. Right? So what is pure bhakti? Pure devotional service? Just bhakti. No other desires. Right? No other wants. No other attractions. As Prabhuji said, nothing else even matters. So, is it possible to have no other desires but Krishna? Yeah, it's possible. It's theoretically possible, we think, right? But not possible for me. So, Prabhupada is saying, how is it that it will become possible for us? What must we have? We must be factually convinced of the different opulences of the Lord. Then, and only then, pure devotional service can come. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this verse that there is no hope for pure devotional service unless one has this conviction in these opulences. I remember when I first read this chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it was sort of a head scratcher, like, okay, move on. It didn't register. But as we start to read deeper, we understand that these opulences are critical to us because they lead us to pure devotional service. So now the question is, how do they do that? How does knowing about these opulences of Krishna lead one to pure devotional service?
When we hear, we get attracted, we want to know more, and when we get to know that He's the source of everything.
Okay, so we get to know more. The more we hear, the more we become attracted. Like if I hear about my distant third uncle, I start to get some attraction. So if I hear about Krishna, I can't just say God. I have to know, well, who is He? What is He like? What is His nature? What is His personality? How does He interact? Right? We need to know these things. Okay? How else does the opulences help us to become pure in our devotional service?
Because we always compare. We have choices all the time and we compare the two. The more we know about the opulences of Krishna, whatever else is attracting us will seem worthless.
If I have mixed devotional service, it means I'm doing some material activities and some spiritual activities. How many of us are in that realm? Okay, I'll close my eyes. We can all internally answer that question. Right? So why is it that I'm holding on to my material activities? Because they're tasty. Right? Well, otherwise, would you? Otherwise, would you?
I just think that because I'm not fully convinced yet, else I would have just given it up. And
because if you are factually convinced that Krishna's opulence is far superior to whatever little mundane material attachment you're hanging on to, what would you do? You'd surrender to Krishna. Yeah. If you had a pocket full of sand and somebody's offering you for each grain of sand $100 bill, would you hold on to some of the sand in your pocket? You hold on to a few grains, wouldn't you? Not 1 or 2 grains? You wouldn't? None of you would? Come on, sand is fun. Arjun, you like sand. You wouldn't hold on to a few grains of sand? Why? Because what is the sand compared to a $100 bill? I'm factually convinced that a $100 bill has more value than a grain of sand. So for us, it's comical. It's foolish. Of course we trade. But why are we trading our material attachments that are full of dukkhalayam shashvatam, full of misery? Because we're not yet factually convinced of the supremacy of Krishna's opulences that are so sweet, so amazing, that anything else pales in comparison. Doesn't even register. Just like a strong flashlight in the midst of a shining sun. Has nothing. But a flashlight in a dark room has some relevance. So our material attachments that we're trading, in the absence of Krishna, yeah, maybe there's some relevance. Yeah, this gives me some happiness, this doesn't. I'm trading my BMW for this and that, and yeah. In the absence of Krishna, maybe there's some relevance. But as soon as Krishna enters the equation, just like the giant sun enters our realm, that flashlight has no significance. All these material attachments, they're just infantile. They're nothing. But because I'm not yet factually convinced of them, I hold on to them. And thus my devotional service is not unalloyed. Because to be purely, fully surrendered to Krishna, before I ask the question, what is holding back? Why are we not fully surrendered to Krishna? What's holding us back? And don't blame your spouse. What's holding us back? Our ego?
Conditioning, maybe, conditioning over this lifetime and other lifetimes.
Yeah, conditioning. Surrender is hard, right? Surrender is difficult. Has anybody surrendered in their life before?
Forcefully.
Actually, if we think about it, we entered this world in a fully surrendered mood. We entered this world, we had no ability to feed ourselves. We were fully surrendered to who?
Parents.
Mother. Father doesn't help so much. Mother. Fully surrendered to mother. Right? Child is lying on the floor, 2 weeks old. Can do nothing on its own. If we try to get a glimpse of surrender, that's what it is. Right? But is there a worry in the mind of child? Why? This child knows mother will come. So when we have knowledge that Krishna will come, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who just in the prior chapter said, I carry what you lack and I preserve what you have. He says, I am carrying on my shoulders everything that you need. And whatever you have, I am preserving it. You don't need insurance policies. I am your insurance policy. Forget Geico. This is your insurance policy. He says it. If we had conviction in this fact alone, I carry what you lack and I preserve what you have. why we would take shelter of anything else. Krishna is saying, it is me who is giving. So when we become convinced of that, the end result is unalloyed devotional service. I no longer need to mix anything else. Because Krishna is my all-loving Father. But it takes factual conviction. And surrender to Krishna cannot happen until we are convinced. Imagine that you are in a deep well. And you have fallen into the well. And you are halfway into this well. And you are holding on to the walls with your hands and your feet. Kind of like Spider-Man, you know. And somebody drops a rope down. What are you going to do? You're going to grab it?
We have no other choice.
You have no other choice.
You can't just hang out there forever.
But what if you grab onto the rope and this person lets go of the rope? You're stuck. You're going to fall further into the well. Right? So when are you going to grab onto that rope and give up? You're holding on to your life, holding onto this well. When are you going to give up?
Have faith.
When you have faith in that, then you'll have. When you have full faith that that person is going to pull you out of this miserable existence of the dark well. And Prahlad Maharaj explains in 7th canto Srimad Bhagavatam that this material life is like a dark well. He's telling his father, you have fallen into a dark well of material existence. And who is waiting there to pull us out? Krishna is. Krishna is waiting to pull us out so eagerly. But we are doubting. What if he lets go? What if his hand slips? What if? And so we hold on to this wall. It's like holding on to our material attachments. It's so foolish. When the rope is there, you should just grab on and go. But we don't. So this surrender to Krishna, sometimes we wonder, when I'm going to surrender to Krishna? When is it going to happen? It's only going to happen when we have firm, factual, convinced knowledge. As convinced as you are that the grain of sand is not as valuable as $100. We're convinced of Krishna's loving opulences. He is the sweetest person. He is the most generous person. He is the most forgiving person. He is the most loving person. I can say this in the company of my own mother and father. Even your own mother and father don't love you as much as Krishna loves you. It's true. It's a fact. Krishna's love for us is unending, unlimited, and undeterring. So when we reciprocate his love in just small fractions, then we experience spiritual perfection. So we'll continue studying these opulences for this purpose only, to help inspire our faith, to let go of this wall, hold on to this rope, and get out of this dark well of existence, and begin to enjoy real life with the Supreme Lord. Right now we're trying to enjoy in a well. It's not very nice. But we think the well is nice. Hey, I have this. Not so bad. Nobody's here bothering me. It's not so bad. We're celebrating Independence Day coming up. foolish. Who are we independent? Oh, no one has independent. We are fully dependent on the mercy of Krishna. Yet we want to celebrate independence. I am independent. Really? You're not even independently able to control the growth of your fingernail on your little pinky. You cannot even control that. You cannot say, you should grow or stop growing. You're not even independently able to control your breast. It'll just happen. Or your heart beating. Independence is fool's gold. Real independence is finding and understanding our dependence on the Supreme Lord. That's real independence. Then we become independent from the clutches of the material world. And we begin to experience the spiritual perfection. So that's real independence. Understanding our supreme dependence on Krishna. So we can meditate on that on this 4th of July coming up. And while we're lighting fireworks, we can try to light the fireworks in our heart for love of Krishna. Because that is what will bring us this ultimate happiness and bliss. Okay? Stop there. Any comments or questions or corrections? Discussion? Yes?
Going back to the well analogy, I really loved that. But what makes it even more difficult is what if you fall in the well with like 3 other people, but you're at the top of the well, and you see kind of the rope coming down, and you hear the voice at the very top saying, "Hey, I can save you. Grab hold of the rope and I'll pull you up." But then, you tell your friends below you, "Hey, there's a rope. You might not be able to see it because it's dark down there, but hey, if you jump for the rope, we'll be pulled up." And you're like, "There's no rope. That's your imagination. I don't hear any voice. I don't know any rope." So that makes it difficult because then you second guess yourself,
Yeah, it's faith comes with practice. We have faith in so many things, but this faith in Krishna comes by practicing our spiritual life and practicing it with some sincerity of purpose. We should chant our rounds, "Krishna, my faith is so weak, but you can give me faith. I know I should have strong faith." We should chant our japa with a mood of prayer to Krishna to help us have this faith, to have this understanding of opulences, to understand what is real perfection of life. That's the kind of things we can pray for. And if we do, Krishna is going to give it to us. He's going to fulfill our desires. If our desires are just to finish our rounds, then we'll just finish our rounds. So whatever challenges in these statements that we're hearing, pray to Krishna. He'll make them alive in our heart. And Krishna, I know these pebbles of sand are not worth the $100, but I'm just not feeling it. I can't let go of my material desires. You help me let go of them. Please. If we sincerely want Him to help us let go of those, He'll make them happen. We can't actually, but He can make them. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So everybody has full faith now?
I just have one comment or
Yeah.
maybe a question.
Please.
I was thinking that once, if we know the greatness about somebody, I'm not sure if it's directly resulting in love, but of course it results in some attraction and respect for sure. That's how I'm looking at it. And is it the ultimate thing that only if you start serving and then you have reciprocation, that's when the love starts? That's kind of a question I think I have.
Yeah, so by rendering devotional service, one acquires knowledge and detachment. It's a very famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. By the rendering of devotional service, one acquires more knowledge of Krishna's position. If I only have knowledge of Krishna's power, it may not inspire love. See, Krishna in the 7th chapter told us that he is the source of everything, apara para shakti. He said he is the essence of everything. Even he is the taste of water, he said, that which quenches our thirst. And he is the controller of everything. So he said those three things. I am the source of everything, I am the essence of everything, and I am the controller of everything. But that won't necessarily inspire love. Okay, great. I'm fully dependent on somebody that controls everything, that is the source of everything, and is the essence of it. Okay? So at that point, I may acknowledge my dependence. Right? An example of this would be a prisoner. A prisoner acknowledges his whole existence dependent on the leaders of the prison. His food, his bedding, his recreation, everything, he's fully dependent. But does he have love? No. Right? So the knowledge we need goes beyond that, which is why now Krishna is speaking this specific. When he begins to speak about his sweet nature, the qualities Krishna has, his unlimited love, his opulence of renunciation. We talked about that's the one opulence we discussed the least of Krishna. We know he's the strongest, the smartest, the most beautiful, the wealthiest, the most intelligent. But the most inspiring for all of us is his opulence of renunciation, because that is exhibited in its fullest with his pure devotees. When we see how Krishna renounces everything he has for his devotees. If I'm going, to a very rich person, and I have to renounce whatever's in my pockets, and he says, I'm going to renounce everything I have, who wins in that bargain? Will we hesitate to renounce what's in our pockets if we're going to some rich person's place and he's going to renounce that? But that's what Krishna is doing. Krishna gives everything to his pure devotees. He just says, you give everything you have to me, I'm giving everything I have to you. It's a two-way street. But who wins in that trade? We do. But it takes knowledge of that. And that knowledge does come by the practice of devotional service. By the cleansing of the heart, this knowledge begins to emerge. Knowledge that we have, actually, it's sitting within our heart. The soul is Sat, Chit, and Ananda. What is the meaning of Chit? Huh? What does Chit mean? All-knowing, knowing. The soul has all this knowledge. It's lying within our heart. And simply by the process of devotional service, we are bringing it out. Right? So we have to cleanse our heart. And the more knowledge we get, but if the knowledge doesn't turn into action, then we stall. We can acquire knowledge and knowledge and knowledge, but if it doesn't lead to action, it's useless. We have to apply the knowledge. It was very hot today and sunny, and somebody says, if you don't put this lotion on, you're going to burn. And they give you the lotion, and you just walk out the door with it. I have the knowledge, but there's no value in that knowledge until I apply it. So this knowledge we have to apply. then it has. So, anything else? Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Now we'll chant the holy names of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki